There is a podcast that lies between the imagination of two simple-minded earthlings. Travel with these two longtime friends, Jimbo and 80s E, as they attempt to explore the fifth dimension. Follow along with them as they take the key and unlock the door to the vast space between shadow and substance. This podcast is one of trivia, of insight, and of sounds and ideas from one of the greatest television shows ever produced. You are embarking on a timeless journey. There is your signpost up ahead. You are entering the tragedy of cinema's Twilight Zone.
There was a village built of crumbling clay and rotting wood, and it squatted ugly under a broiling sun like a sick and mangy animal wanting to die. This village had a virus shared by its people. It was the germ of squalor, of hopelessness, of a loss of faith. For the faithless, the hopeless, the misery-laden, there is time, ample time, to engage in one of the other pursuits of men. They begin to destroy themselves.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Tragedy of Cinema, the Twilight Zone podcast. I'm your host Jimbo, and joined once again by
80s E in the Southern Layer. Once again, continuing on. This is episode number 2 from the Southern Layer, and it's entitled Dust.
Yep. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. That's how I felt after I watched this episode. So, Eric, let's not waste any time. Let's just go ahead and jump right in there.
Okay. This episode entitled Dust, the Twilight Zone. This is season number 2. And it's episode number 12, and it was directed by Douglas Hayes, written by Rod Serling, featured music by Jerry Goldsmith, and its original air date was January the 6th, 1961, which brings us to our little segment known as On This Day in History. All right, so on this day, meaning January the 6th, in TV and film history, in 2016, Star Wars The Force Awakens breaks the North American box office record, passing $760 million. It surpassed Avatar at that point in 2016.
And you know what Avatar said? Hold my beer, because as we record this, I think it's probably already shattered that record.
Yeah, maybe so. I haven't gotten to see the new one yet. So that's as it pertains to film. Let's talk about TV. On this day, January 6, 1957, Elvis Presley makes his 7th and final appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show. So there you go. You got a little film and a little TV history as pertains to January the 6th. Let me talk about production costs for this episode of The Twilight Zone. It comes in at $53,089.46, and when we adjust that for inflation for 2023 now, we're at $528,605.89 with an 895% increase. Jimbo, do you have any extra line items?
You know I do.
All right.
The dates of rehearsal was the 22nd and the 23rd of 1960, which would have been September. The dates of the filming, September 26th, 27th, and 28th. So it took 3 days of filming, which is kind of unusual for Twilight Zone to go 3 days of filming. Script number 53 was dated August 2nd, 1960, with revised pages dated September 21st, 1960. The shooting script dated September 21st, 1960. The producer and secretary had a line total of $1,775. The director was $1,250. You know, that directors, they're always making out like a bandit in these things.
They're making the bucks.
And the secretary, she's getting paid all kinds of stuff. I don't know what she was doing. But the story of secretary was $2,630. The cast, way up from last episode, really? $6,620.63. The unit manager, and again, another secretary, $350. Agents commissions, $2,500. Production fee of $825. Legal and accounting, $250. Below the line charges for MGM, $35,346.20. Below the line charges for other was $1,542.63. And the total production cost was $53,089.46.
All right, you want to move on to the cast and take that away? Or
Absolutely.
all right.
So here is the cast of Dust. You have Thomas Gomez playing Peter Sykes. You may notice him from Beneath the Planet of the Apes or Key Largo from 1948. John Larch, who was Sheriff Koch. He was in Dirty Harry, where he played the chief in 1971. And Eric, he was in Airplane 2, the sequel. I know you're a big fan of Airplane 1, but what about the sequel?
I don't remember much about the sequel, but
Easily to forget.
yeah, there's probably a reason for that.
Vladimir Sokolov. He was Old Man Galagos. He was in The Magnificent Seven, where he played the old man in 1960, which we've covered way back in the early days of this podcast in episode 7. John A. Alonzo was Luis Galagos as John Alonzo. He was in Chinatown, which we have covered on this podcast. He was in The Magnificent Seven, where he played Miguel. For Chinatown, he was the director of photography. And he was also in for Star Trek's Generations movie. He was the cinematographer. So he had more than just acting. He actually was a lot of other things as well. Paul George was John Canfield. He was in Bullitt in 1968. Dorothy Adams played Mrs. Canfield. She was in The Best Years of Our Lives in 1946. She was also in The Ten Commandments, the great Charlton Heston movie, where she played a couple of roles in that, although they weren't very big roles. You had Dwayne Gray, where he was Rogers. He was in JFK in 1991. And John Lamore as the man. He played in Creepshow in 1982. There's also a whole another page of uncredited actors, which we're not going to talk about for time's sake.
Yeah, this was another episode that with a pretty well when you count all of the stand-ins, there was quite a pretty big cast in this episode, just like Night of the Meek, I guess. So John Alonzo and Vladimir Zoklov, however you pronounce his name, they both were in The Magnificent Seven from 1960. That's pretty cool. And what did you say that was episode number 7 that was covered in the podcast? All right, let's move on with the plot. In a dusty old western town, a man is scheduled to be hanged after being found guilty of accidentally killing a child while drunk. His father begs for mercy, but the marshal has no choice but to proceed with the sentence. Sykes, an odious salesman, takes advantage of the situation by selling the desperate father magic dust. Yeah, magic dust, which he says will make the townsfolk take pity on his son. Soon, though, events provide for an unexpected conclusion. So, we open up the episode, the camera sort of pans down on this weird-looking horse, and I have some trivia about that horse.
About
the hollow-backed horse, in the foreground, which is shown many times. The hollow-backed horse in the foreground, beside the jail, had a condition of malformed vertebrae and a weakness in the soft tissue, in the soft tissues that allowed the spine to sag. It was called Lordosis, lordosis. So that poor horse had a condition. Apparently.
And I think when Rod Serling's narration, I think is really cool because they're testing the noose, the gallows, and you see it drop behind him. I thought that was really cool. Yeah,
so that his narration comes really early in this particular episode. So,
Eric, if you had to name that horse, what would you name it?
Sags. Sir Sag-a-Lot? I don't know. I don't know.
Bend it like Beckham?
Humpback. Well, actually, it was a reverse humpback. Because it was, I don't know. So we meet, what's his name again? We meet Peter Sykes. All right, now this little bit of trivia kind of was puzzling to me. Peter Sykes was played by Tom Gomez. So IMDb says that Tom Gomez, who played the hefty Mexican, was actually a full-blooded white European. His ancestry was from Spain, France, and Ireland. But I never got the impression that Peter Sykes was remotely Hispanic or Mexican in the episode. I just thought he was a traveling... Now, he's in a predominantly... I don't know if this is on the southern border in the 19th century where this is set, like in the 1800s, but I never got the impression that he was supposed to be playing a Hispanic or Mexican.
You talking about the salesman?
Yeah, I just assumed that he was a white male, Caucasian. Like it says here, his ancestry is... It says that he's actually from Spain, France, and Ireland mix. I don't know. It was sort of... I don't know why they brought that up. Though. Yeah, he played a really sinister part. He was sort of the high spot in this episode. I just thought that was kind of confusing to me because I never got the impression that he was supposed to be of Hispanic or Mexican descent in the episode, so I don't know why they bothered to even, identify that. So, did I mention this already? Maybe not, but this particular story had several adaptations with differing titles, and it sort of got, it started out, well, let me just read about what it started out as, and then it sort of got filtered down to just Dust. No pun intended, filtered down to dust. But in 1950, Serling wrote a radio script entitled The Dust by Any Other Name concerning a character named Abner Bodner, who attempts to build a chemical plant that would reduce magic dust. When breathed, the dust would make his mortal enemies forget their hatred, and as a result of his efforts, Bodner had an accident that cost him his life, proving to everyone in the town that a man who dies in his belief of peace leaves a larger mark on society. So apparently that was a radio script that Rod wrote in 1950. And then on June 19th, 1958, CBS presented an episode, again, here we are, of the Playhouse 90, and this one was entitled A Town That Has Turned to Dust, scripted by Serling. This version told the story of a lynching of a 19-year-old Mexican boy by a mob spurred on by a young merchant whose hatred of the victim stemmed from both his wife accepting the affection of the doomed boy and from deep-rooted prejudice against Mexicans. It was also the story of the town sheriff who gives in feebly to a lynching mob but stands firm when it comes to hanging the victim's brother after he defies the Jim Crow standards of the town. The brother is saved by the sheriff who, after killing the merchant and also is dying from the merchant's bullet, tells of the time years ago when he had led the mob in the ugly, lawless murder of another man. Now, the Playhouse 90 teleplay was a rewrite of an old script entitled Aftermath. So you see there are several adaptations here where this Twilight Zone episode actually comes from. Okay, so Aftermath, which was initially rejected by the sponsors who were afraid it was too controversial. The original story dealt with the Southern segregation problem, but Serling revised it to center around a Mexican, and the time was pushed back to the late 19th century. So I think the origin, from other things that I've read and podcasts that I've listened to, the Emmett Till story hit Rod Serling really hard, and he wrote these different adaptation stories, whether it's by radio or teleplay, and it's sort of reflecting a lot of the themes of the Emmett Till story. Mm-hmm. And I won't go in and unpack all of those things. There are plenty of resources out there that you can go and learn from history about Emmett Till and all of those things. But anyway, this, again, was just a sort of an adaptation, a lot of themes surrounding those 3 or 4 different stories that he wrote, and finally landed here with this episode, Dust and the Twilight Zone.
Well, let me go ahead. Since we've brought up Playhouse 90 multiple times, there's still several more in this book that brings up Playhouse 90. I wanted to know what Playhouse 90 was. And I thought, is this where, all the people go to party, like Studio 54 or Club whatever? Playhouse 90, it was actually a TV series that ran from 1956 to 1961, and I did not know that. And the way it was set up is that they would do 3 live shows, and then the 4th show would be taped, so it would relieve the pressure of having live TV over and over and over and them getting burnt out. So I thought that was very interesting that a lot of the Twilight Zones and the scripts, they would take from the Playhouse 90 and reinvent them or revamp them to the Twilight Zone. It's amazing that I've never heard of Playhouse 90, but you hear of the Twilight Zone. So I wonder if I go back and watch some of the Playhouse 90s, if I could draw from what Rod drew from, or Buck Houghton or whoever, and seeing what they went from there and come to the conclusion of where they came through with some of these episodes. Yeah,
and I know a lot of the actors as well came over from Playhouse 90, like Jack Klugman, and some, just to mention one, like there were several that came over from that television show to work on the Twilight Zone. So where are we at in the episode here? We kind of left off. Oh, I wanted to mention one thing. The little boy who talks to Lewis, we've already passed that in the episode as we're reviewing it now. The little boy that talks to Lewis through the bars of the jail window was played by Douglas Hayes Jr., who was the son of the director of this episode. So, I've already given the plot. This Peter Sykes character, though, I mean, he's a real dirtbag, right? And he is just mocking the prisoner, the man who's been accused and tried and convicted. What's his name? John Alonzo. His real name, Luis Gallego, in the episode, the man who's convicted of accidentally killing a young girl. Well, he crashes into her with his wagon. So, the father in this story, I thought, played a really good, and the sheriff as well. I mean, it wasn't a great episode overall, and I'm kind of skipping ahead, but I thought it was pretty well acted. The story itself was okay, but when we jump right in here, the Peter Sykes character, again, he stands out, by far. And so,
it's anything he could do to make money off somebody less fortunate than he is.
And the father, is he actually is he a Russian actor? Vladimir Sokolov? That's kind of interesting too, that he was that seems like a Russian or a Ukrainian type name, that he's playing a Hispanic father, but I thought he played a really good role as well. And he's begging for his son's life.
Right.
He's begging
let
for
me all
mercy.
make mistakes.
Yeah, and the sheriff, I mean, you really see the compassion from the sheriff. He wishes he could just, at this, he doesn't have the authority, but he wants to pass over him and give this guy mercy, but he doesn't really have the authority to do that because he's already been convicted and he's already been sentenced, and so he has to carry out and do his duty and carry out this hanging. Just by way of superfluous trivia, this episode came in about $5,500 over budget. The dates of filming were originally scheduled for October 24th, 25th, and 26th. Jimbo, you might have already mentioned that, but with rehearsal dates of the 20th and the 21st of October. And when it was decided that Douglas Hayes would not be filming Charles Beaumont, when it was decided that Douglas Hayes would not be filming and Charles Beaumont was unproduced acceleration in mid-October, the dates were pushed ahead and rescheduled according to the release date scheduled August 25th, 1960. This episode was originally scheduled for broadcast on March 3rd, 1961. So it sounds like the reason why it was over budgeted was because it had to be pushed forward and it was accelerated. So they had to make some changes, which cost them some money in the long run. So in regards to the episode, Sykes, he basically pulls a trick on. He tells Gallego's daughter, who's with her grandfather, he tells her that, give me 100 pesos and I'll give you magic dust that will basically turn the hearts of the people who are coming out to the hanging. It's going to turn their hearts and make them sympathetic to her father, and that they won't want to execute him by way of hanging. Of course, he's lying to her, and so she is told to go and give that message to her grandfather, or Papa, yeah. And then you see this scene where, Sykes takes out his tobacco, pouch out of his pocket. And he dumps all the tobacco out on the ground and fills it up with just regular street dirt and calls it magic dust. There's not a whole lot with this episode, like you mentioned before. We could probably skip to the end. So the main twist in the episode, they are about to proceed forth with the execution. And, right?
What?
The rope breaks.
Right. Well, but it's brand new rope. That's why Sykes is saying, he's like, I don't understand. This is brand new rope.
Yeah.
He's like, the finest there is. Never broke, never tethered, tattered.
Right. And so that's kind of the major twist. The camera, it's cool in a way, like the camera's sort of zoomed in or focused on the papa or the grandfather, and his son is being executed. You hear the noise of the sandbags or whatever drop, and you hear the floorboard drop out of the gallows.
But before they do that, is that where the dad says, wait, I got this magic dust, and he throws it up in the air over the people, and he's like, look, this magic dust, you don't want to do this, blah, blah, blah.
You have to, what does he say? I don't remember the exact line. You must believe the dust, or you... he says it over and over and over again. It's been a while since I actually watched this one. But he basically says, like, you must respect the dust or whatever. And having a little technical error here. But he basically says it over and over and over again. And Sykes is stunned. He can't believe that the rope broke. And he calls it, like, he says it's 5-strand hemp. It's like some of the sturdiest rope that you can. It's brand new. Like, there's no way that it, that it should break. And I can't remember what the dad says, but he says it over and over and over again. It's gonna bug me now. You cannot. He says you cannot try to defeat the magic. You can't defeat the magic dust. You have to. I got some things later and questions and observations that I wanted to bring up. But I'll wait and save those to the end. Jimbo, do you have anything out of your...
Well, and basically the rope breaks, and the sheriff says, hey, do you want us to string him up again? And the daughter that was killed's parents are like, look, this town suffered enough. This family suffered enough. Let's just call it a day,
right.
Basically. And basically they let him go. So basically the dust, did it actually work?
Well,
or was it just a change of heart? Let me read this for you first. In the old Twilight Zone companion by Mark Scott Zickery. It says, although completely competently written, Dust lost much of its dramatic punch due to the conception of the episode by director Douglas Hayes. When it came to difficult, tricky episodes, Hayes had no equal. But Dust had no trickery. It was simple, straightforward Western with a little bit of magic. Here's how Hayes conceived of the episode. Dust was about a town that had sunk into the dust in effect. It had no energy. The people there were listless. They were going to allow this man to be hanged simply because it was easier than not doing that. In keeping with his conception, Hayes directed all the actors, with the exception of Vladimir Sokolov, Thomas Gomez, and John Alonzo, to play their roles with lethargy bordering on the catonic. A case in point was John Large, who played the sheriff. John Large came in, and I changed him quite a bit, said Hayes, because he was written as a strong sheriff, and I played him as a sheriff who had no energy at all, who represented the listlessness of that town. It was hard for John to do because he's a man with energy. For all of its faults, Dust remains an entertaining episode thanks to the performances of Gomez and Sokolov. Both had long and distinguished film careers. Sokolov's credits include The Life of Emilia Zoll Juarez and For Whom the Bell Tolls, and knew how to milk a part for all it's worth. As Sykes, in a part very different from the urban devil he portrayed in the Escape Clause, if you remember that, from season 1.
Yeah.
Gomez is so rotten you can almost smell him, and Sokolov as the father gives a performance of enormous anguish and dignity.
Yeah, that's very well said and a good summary of the episode for sure. So the man ultimately he is saved, and he and his Pop, his father, embrace. He's set free by the mother and by the mother and father of the little girl who was involved in the accident. They sort of extend to him mercy, which, by law, I don't know. It's Western, the Old West law. I'm sure he couldn't probably do that, but again, it's TV.
And at the end of the episode, Sykes is over there. He goes over and picks up. He's like, "It's a new rope. I just don't understand. It's a new rope."
Yeah. He really did play.
And then he does give the pesos back to the kids.
Yeah, which I didn't expect.
Yeah,
that was a twist, I guess, because I didn't.
That's because they were all sitting there.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was, and that kind of brings us to the end of the episode. But just by way of questions and observations, I already talked about the hollow-backed horse. I just put justice or mercy ? I guess I have one criticism. My one criticism is that these two difficult, complex, colliding concepts cannot be solved with magic dust. I I don't understand. I forget what other episode that happened where sort of Rod conflates magic with. Well, they use I don't know if they use this exact line, but I know they use the word providence, and we could go on and say divine providence. So you can't conflate those two as the same thing, I guess. Magic and divine providence, and he sort of intermixes them, and this isn't the first time he's done that. He's done it in other episodes. I think it might have been the Bowley episode where the fighter or whatever. Yeah. I think that if my memory serves me, but that's
big,
my
tall
one
wish.
Yeah, exactly. Big tall wish. That's my one sort of criticism. That mixing the divine intervention or providence and magic was kind of a turnoff for me again, because I believe that they're entirely two different things, but other people may not feel the same way, and that's fine. However, it does raise the question in my mind, and I would extend that question to you, is would I be so forgiving if someone had run over my daughter, one of my daughters, and they were tragically killed?
Would you?
I don't know. I can't answer that question. Obviously, there weren't drunk driving laws in the 19th century in the Old West.
Well, obviously there was.
Well, I mean, according to this episode, there were. But it still begs the question, would I be as merciful and forgiving as the mother and father in this episode? And just because it was an accident and someone is sorry doesn't mean that restitution shouldn't be made. So again, it comes back to that justice or mercy. I mean, obviously, if you're the one behind bars, you want mercy.
Right. Well, here's another thing, too. Once the... excuse me. Once the rope broke and he fell through, it's basically saying... Okay, well, we tried to kill him. I can't try to kill him again. What I don't understand is why didn't he go back to jail? Yeah,
that's kind of what I was trying to figure out earlier. All of a sudden, it's not really up to... Well, the way our laws are set up in the U.S. is that it's not up to the people who were the victims of the crime. It's up to a jury, or it's up to a judge to decide. And just because it was a failed execution doesn't mean you get to go free.
Right.
And the parents really ultimately, they can't decide that guy's fate.
It's like somebody on death row. If they go to lethal and inject this...
And it doesn't kill them.
And it doesn't work, they don't say, oh, well, you're good. Let's just go ahead and let's leave prison. We just schedule it another day.
But it's all chalked up to the magic dust, right? Right. So, I mean, that's the whole idea behind the episode. But your overall takeaways of it?
Again, it's a Western style setting,
which you don't like already.
Like Westerns. It's a known fact. My grandpa would be probably rolling over in his grave right now if he heard me say that, because I'm not a John Wayne fan. I'm not a Clint Eastwood fan. I don't like any Westerns. I do like Tombstone. I thought that was a really good movie.
You didn't like The Magnificent Seven?
It's, again, there's only a couple that I do like. That would be another one. But it's just... I don't know. There's just something about this episode that doesn't grab a hold of me and my attention like it should. I thought that Sykes played an outstanding part. He did a really good job as that traveling salesman. You hated that guy. I hated him watching it. You know what I mean? But he had a little bit of redemption at the end, too. So, to me, it's just a midway episode again. Nothing outstanding, nothing terrible about it. It's just there. So, for that, it's probably a 5.5, 5 for me. Nothing to write home about.
I'd put it at about the same, about a 5.5 or a 6 maybe.
I cannot wait till the end of this season to see what our awards are going to be given out for.
I need to start. I need to start making a running list, because we're getting too far along down the trail here.
You're going to forget.
And I'm going to forget, and I need to put my list together while it's fresh in my mind. But that pretty much concludes this episode. I thought Rod writes under the surface. There are a lot of big philosophical issues that you have to consider. Again, like the justice and the mercy. He really makes you think in this episode. And not that it was bad. There's no... I guess there is the twist that the rope breaks. That's the big Twilight Zone twist. But again, I would echo your statement that it's kind of middle of the road. It's not terrible, but it's not...
There's nothing to be remembered for.
Yeah, it's not Eye of the Beholder. It's not on that level. It's probably a 5.5 or a 6, and it wasn't bad. And it makes you think about some deep philosophical things, but not all that great.
Still better than Nick of Time.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, I think that this episode's coming to a close. Join us again next week, which next week's episode leaps and bounds above this one. Personally, it's one of my favorites from season 2 so far. So stay tuned for that. So with that being said, I think this episode's coming to a close, and that's a wrap.
And cut.
It was a very small, misery-laden village on the day of a hanging, and of little historical consequence. And if there's any moral to it at all, let's say that in any quest for magic, in any search for sorcery, witchery, legerdemain, first check the human heart. For inside this deep place is a wizardry that costs far more than a few pieces of gold. Tonight's case in point, in the Twilight Zone.